Dr. Henry Wallace sat in his office, staring at a photograph taken a few years ago. It showed his family, his wife Sarah, son Jake, and daughter Emma. They had all died in a plane crash, and since then, his life had become empty. The only goal that remained for Henry was to bring them back, and he decided to do it, despite all prohibitions and ethical questions. Henry was one of the most prominent geneticists of his time. His research in cloning led him to the idea that he could restore his loved ones. He gathered all the necessary equipment in his underground laboratory complex and began the cloning process. Months of intense work, long sleepless nights, and finally he stood before the incubators, watching his new family copies grow. When the process was complete, Sarah, Jake, and Emma emerged before him, perfect replicas of those he had lost. They were flawless. But this was just the beginning. The first weeks were filled with joy. Henry had his family back again. But soon he began to notice strange things. At first, it was little things. Sarah could suddenly stop in the middle of a conversation and stare into one spot for several minutes. Jake would sometimes start speaking in an unknown language, and Emma had strange bursts of aggression that couldn't be explained. Henry decided to conduct additional research, and the test results shocked him. He discovered that the DNA of his clones had unknown mutations. Something had gone wrong in the cloning process. He decided to observe his family, installing cameras in all rooms of the house. One night, while reviewing the footage from the cameras, he saw Sarah, Jake, and Emma standing in a circle in the basement, holding hands. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and they were whispering incomprehensible words. Henry turned pale as he realized that his loved ones had become part of something sinister. He decided to go to the basement and stop this. When he descended, he was met with the empty stares of his cloned loved ones. They stood motionless, their faces devoid of emotion. Henry tried to speak to them, but his voice broke with fear. "You are not my family," he said, his voice trembling. "What are you?" Sarah, Jake, and Emma simultaneously turned their heads towards him and spoke with one voice. "We are what you created, Henry. We are your creation, and we will not obey you." Suddenly, they rushed at him with terrifying speed and strength he could not have imagined. Henry barely managed to escape to the laboratory and lock himself in. He heard them pounding on the door, their voices turning into a ghastly chorus repeating, "We are your creation." Realizing that he needed to stop this nightmare, Henry began entering the self-destruct sequence for the laboratory. He knew it was his only chance to destroy his creations and himself, to prevent this horror from spreading further. The door began to splinter as he entered the final command. The laboratory started to collapse, explosions filling the space. Henry knew this was the end, but he felt relief, understanding that he had finally stopped what he had created. A few months after the incident, local authorities found the ruins of the laboratory. They never discovered what exactly had happened there, but there were rumors of strange lights and sounds heard on those nights. And on the outskirts of town, a new family appeared. They were quiet, friendly, and did not stand out. But sometimes, on dark nights, neighbors heard strange whispers coming from their house, and no one knew where their glowing eyes came from.